Officially, a very warm welcome to this online event, which is the first of a two-part series in cooperation with DMEXCO Asia, exploring how digital strategies are being redefined in Asia. Before we start with the, as always, super smart content from Björn and Katharina as well, let's explain today's setup and setting. And I will start with myself. I'm Stefan Mohr. In my professional life, I'm COO, at the traditional digital agency brand Argonauten. And furthermore, since a lot of years, I can't count the years, I am engaged in the BVDW, which translates into German Federal Association of the Digital Economy, where I'm the chairman of the digital agencies within this organization. The BVDW is deeply linked with the DMEXCO, which is the leading digital marketing and tech event in Europe. Not only belongs the brand DMEXCO to BVDW, but BVDW contributes a lot to the DMEXCO conference program. For instance, every year we organize a whole masterclass program for everything that's important right now in digital marketing and tech. And of course, this year it's all about AI, as the years before as well. And as a highlight this year, we launched the Creativity Summit on day one, which we take, where we take a look into the future, because creativity will be the driving force that combines brands, culture, and technology. This and much more happens at the 17th and 18th September in Cologne. So mark your calendars, be there, and meet us there. So now back to our topics here. As the DMEXCO is a constant in every decision maker schedule, and the conference itself is international from the beginning, the content focus is constantly expanded and optimized, not only for the newest digital topics and trends, but also from a region perspective. The newest child is DMEXCO Asia, and I'd like to welcome Katharina Gründig-Figueroa. She's Global Brand Manager at the Koelnmesse. At the moment, doing the last installments of the Gamescom, and she can enlighten us a little bit about DMEXCO Asia. So, Katharina, who are you and what is it all about, DMEXCO Asia?
Yeah, I hope my network works right now because I'm getting messages that it's unstable. So maybe somebody shows me a thumb up to see if it works. The DMEXCO Asia is happening for the first time this year, together with other verticals in the Tech Week Singapore event. I had the date here, but my computer is almost shutting down, sorry. It's in the beginning of October. Maybe Björn can say the date at a later moment. Exactly, and we are kind of transporting the concept of DMEXCO to Asia in Tech Week Singapore that yet doesn't have a very strong digital marketing focus. They already have some expo and topics around e-commerce. So we are coming in with a whole digital marketing as well as we see fit, and we are partnering on site. As Stefan said, I am right now at Gamescom. We are on our last build-up day. It's absolutely crazy today, and all the team from DMEXCO Asia is also here for Gamescom Asia. So that's why we cannot join everyone today. I think next week we will have someone from the DMEXCO Asia team themselves here as well. Yeah, and my position at Koelnmesse is a global umbrella position where I strategically develop global events. Shortly said, on several topics. Basically. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Katharina. So now let's move on to the content of this session. And I asked myself, why Asia and why Asia today and why does it matter? And the answer is quite simple, because in our daily business, mine included and yours, I think as well, we are nearly always focused on what is happening in the US. We look at Silicon Valley, check the latest gossip on Elon, Sam, Tim, Sundar, Satya, which is really time consuming and probably quite enough in addition to the daily tasks that's, of our businesses. But in Asia, a lot of things are happening that affects us as well, with the obvious examples of Temu or TikTok. But there's so much more to learn, businesses that do things differently and could act as a valid inspiration. To prevent us from missing out so much, today we would like to build a bridge from Europe to Asia and neglecting the US. And we have invited Björn, who is exactly doing this for several years right now. So handing over to Björn, who are you? What are you doing exactly? And why does it matter?
Yeah, my name is Björn Onibini. I'm based in Hamburg, and my imaginary job title, as I always say, is practical visionary. Yeah, I'm trying to find new, interesting, mostly digital trends, and then help my clients understand them, but also do something with them. That's where the practical parts comes in. And for this, I used to go to the US. I'm still like to go to the US, but I haven't seen much digital trends coming out of the US for like 10 years or so. AI is a little bit different. We talk about this later, but I started to look the other direction a couple of years ago, and realized that a lot of digital trends nowadays come from Asia. Mm-hmm. And nobody's looking there. So I thought it might be a good idea to start telling people why it makes sense to look there. And that's exactly what we're doing today.
Great. So from your perspective, as Europeans, how do we perceive Asia in general? Is it still the very cheap products that are shipped and copycats and stuff like that? What would you say about that?
Yeah, I think that's something that we all can ask ourselves. Yeah, what's our image? What's the picture in our mind when we think about Asia? Maybe holiday. Yeah, you spent just a couple of days on holiday in Asia. That's a great place to have great food, great value for money. Yeah, so that's something that is very usual for us. But it's not the place where we get the business trends from. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and yeah, that's what we want to talk about today.
Great. And one last question before we start into going deeply into AI in Asia. Everybody is when it's about Asia, everybody's focused on China. And I myself, you mentioned it. I was in Indonesia. I was in Singapore, which was really nice. But when it's about trends, everybody's looking to China and not to the other rich countries over there. So can you do a little bit of of your perspective? Could you give us some?
We go into this in the presentation.
Okay.
I focus very much on China, and I explain why. But of course, Singapore is a place that I always love to be. Yeah, it's a really, for me, it's the best well-run city on the globe. Yeah, there are a lot of reasons to go to all over Asia, and I have a couple of examples now that mostly come from China, or Greater China, but that doesn't mean that Asia is only China. From India over Southeast Asia with Japan, yeah, the whole region is interesting.
Okay, so then enough talking on to the topics, and we choose two of them. One of them being e-commerce, which we will cover next week, same day, Tuesday, same time. On today, it's all about AI with a different Asian approach of the technology, not as a cost-cutting tool, but as a driver of growth and innovation. And now I switch off my microphone as well. Björn, over to you. Thank you.
Okay, and I leave mine open. Okay, so hello also again from my side. We want to talk about today about the topic that everybody is talking about these days, AI. But before we go into the topic, we go back to what we just talked about, about us. Yeah, we in the West think that everything what we do is normal. Yeah, we are the default state of things, and everybody who's doing things differently, he has to explain himself. Yeah, and that's rather unusual when we think about the fact that we are not that many. Yeah, in Europe, I think we're about 5% together with the US. It's about 10% of the world population. But what's interesting, if you draw a circle that you see here that actually is pretty small in size, then there are more people living inside the circle than outside. So when we are talking about Asia, we are talking about more than half of the population. And that's something that I think nobody really is aware of. Yeah, and when we think that we can do that we are the ones who define the rules, the values to live by, then we always have to keep in mind that the others are a much bigger group. And things are changing. Yeah, more and more trends are coming actually out of Asia. Yeah, and it's not only tech. Yeah, I think you're all familiar with the TV series Squid Games on Netflix. Yeah, that was a massive global hit, and that's an extremely interesting example for Asian rising soft power. Yeah, and nowadays it comes from Korea. Korean cinema is something that actually gets copied by Hollywood. Yeah, it's an interesting place to get creative content from. Yeah, my daughter, for example, is very much into Korean music. Yeah, and that's something that was unheard of like 40, 30 years ago. There are also things like this. I'm not sure if anybody knows what this is. That's a Labubu from the Chinese company PopMart. If you don't know this, and if you have kids, you probably will meet him, her, it in the next couple of months or 1-2 years, because PopMart is taking the world by storm. Yeah, it's an extremely interesting example for a retail brand coming out of China and going global, and not with cheap copies of something, but something that's really original, very creative. And we don't talk about this today. We talk about this in the next session. So that's one side of the story. The other side of the story is that our world is in constant turmoil right now. And we more and more realize that this is the new normal. Yeah, the world before COVID is a totally different world, and we no longer live in it. Yeah, everything is changing around us constantly in every areas. And the big question is, if the world is changing, we obviously need new ideas. Yeah, where do we find these new ideas? Yeah, that's the question that I usually try to address with the stuff that I'm doing. And of course, as I just mentioned, I used to go to the US for finding answers to this, but more and more often I'm finding myself more to look to Asia for new ideas, to Singapore, but also, as I just mentioned, very much to China. And the reason why China is so interesting is that China is the only region in the world that doesn't get much influence from the States, and especially from the digital giants in Silicon Valley. Yeah, that's a huge problem. If you look to, for example, Singapore, India, Japan, we are all in the same ecosystem. Yeah, we are all on Instagram, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, what you know them all. Yeah? And if we need new ideas or different ideas, we have to look to a place where things are different. And that's China. Yeah? In China, we have different ecosystems, people that make totally different experiences, and they end up giving us totally different ideas. And that's why it's so interesting to look to China, to find new perspectives, yeah? to turn our world a little bit upside down. And that's what we're going to do now in the next 30 minutes with AI. Yeah, we want to try to understand how different China's or Asia's approach is to AI and what we can learn from this. And it's not a course about how to generate the next cool image or video. Yeah, that's the next room. We're trying to get really new perspectives, yeah, on a strategic level. And that's rather unusual for us, because we don't, as we just mentioned, we are not used to look to Asia for new ideas. And the resulting effect is that we very often get surprised by stuff coming out of Asia. Yeah, I think you all know this. TikTok was a big surprise. Temu was one. Yeah, BYD, all the electric cars that now come from China is something that's caused a lot of surprises in German automaker circles. And the biggest surprise at the beginning of this year, I think, in AI was DeepSeek. Yeah, it was the third version of something that was around for 3 years, I think. So it's not really so new, but it was new for us because we never really thought about this. We never looked at what DeepSeek is doing in Hangzhou. And the result was pretty staggering, yeah, when all these stock prices fell off a cliff once DeepSeek appeared on world stage. Why was this the case? Because we are spending so much money on AI that we think spending giant numbers probably also means earning giant numbers in a few years. And then we suddenly saw a company like DeepSeek that seemed to found a different way to do AI. Yeah, without all these latest chips, not without spending any money. They are spending very serious money, but not the amount of money that Western companies are spending. Yeah, that was one of the reasons why that had so huge ripple effects. But there was something that was very often overlooked that was also new with DeepSeek, because once DeepSeek became available and looked like a rather powerful tool, in China, every company started to do something with DeepSeek. Yeah. In China, companies are not that much into hype; they are more into work. Yeah, and every company tried to put DeepSeek into their products. Yeah, as you see on the right side, even state-owned companies, government organizations, everybody actually tried to get DeepSeek to work and integrate into the stuff that they are doing. And that's a totally different approach if you think about AI or how we approach AI. Yeah. When we talk about AI, if you look to your LinkedIn feed, what's dominating the topics there? Yeah, it's benchmarks, it's cool demos, it's market caps. Yeah, it's that companies get extremely rich or spending a lot of money hoping to get extremely rich, getting great stock prices. These are the kind of stuff that we talk about when we talk about AI. We also love to talk about things AI can't do. Yeah, like, for example, with the GPT-5 launch, all these funny posts about drawing a map of Germany without being able to place the names of the states right. Yeah, that's something that we also love to talk about. I always think that's a little bit ridiculous. Yeah, it feels a little bit like I drive my car into a river and then say, "Hey, look, it can't swim; it sinks." Yeah, of course it does. What's more important or what's more interesting is, what can we actually do with AI? Yeah, with the models that are there. And that's a topic that I don't find much content in my LinkedIn feed. Yeah, and real change is possible with AI today, not with waiting for models. And that's what we actually want to talk about now. And real change doesn't mean just to get a little bit more efficient. And that's the way how we right now mostly use AI. Yeah, we still do what we always did, but we try to use AI to make things easier, faster, or cheaper. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong about this. Yeah, it's perfectly fine to do this, but we also have to be aware that if we only do this, we are stuck in an efficiency trap. Yeah, we are just trying to still make the same things that we always do, without getting really the potential out of AI. Yeah, and very often we also have a problem with efficiency and effectiveness. I think you all heard about the case where Klarna was using all these AI agents and kicked out all their call center stuff with nice sounding press releases, and a year later, they realized that doesn't work that well. Yeah, and they are rehiring these people. So focusing on efficiency sometimes even doesn't work. Yeah, and then there is the problem that sometimes we confuse real change with mere innovation theater. Yeah, we take something old and put something new in front of it and try to make headway with this, and then it just looks ridiculous and gets us nowhere. Yeah. And that's only a nice narrative, but there are also numbers to back this up. I'm not sure if you saw the study from McKinsey in June 2025, where they talked about something that they called the Gen AI paradox. They discovered that nearly every company that they talked to are using Gen AI these days, but nearly no one can find earnings or material contribution to earnings from AI. Yeah, they are spending money on it. They're trying things. They're doing pilots and POCs, but really contribution to the bottom line is, well, hard to find. So the question is, where do we find the real game changers? And game changers, I mean, business critical AI applications that go beyond just saving money. They are used at scale, and today, not tomorrow, not a concept, not a POC, but really in production. And these are things that we actually can find in Asia, or specifically in our case in China, or Shein would say they are based in Singapore, so it's a Singapore company. But Shein is basically an AI case. Yeah, nobody really frames it like this. I've never saw a real newspaper article talking about AI as an Shein as an AI case. It's all about cheap clothes and all the negative sides, but basically it's an AI case. Yeah, what they did is they were using, or they are using, AI to rethink their supply chains. You know, they move the business coordination that's necessary to run a supply chain from humans to AI. And the effect is that while Zara is churning out around, I think, even more than 50,000 SKUs per year, Shein is able to give us 10,000 up to 10,000 SKUs per day. Yeah, because it's so much more efficient, but they are not doing the same thing. They are doing things much differently. And they have built basically some kind of fashion flywheel that uses all kinds of, in all kinds of areas, AI. So you can say that AI for them is not a tool, it's a platform. The whole company is running on AI. And that's something that we actually never really talked about this way. Yeah, the whole system is called LATR, yeah, large scale automated test and reorder. But basically what it means is real change here means they are not optimizing human workflows, they are deleting them. Yeah, they are totally reorganizing the way how we work using AI. Another interesting example that you might never have heard about, but it's really interesting, is Accio from Alibaba. Yeah, it's a chatbot, it's a mobile app and a native app that you can use to build supply chains. Yeah? Like, for example, you want to sell, you are a sports guy and you have a sports shop and you want to sell products related to pickleball. Then you can use Accio and tell this Accio, and then Accio, you have no idea what kind of products you want to sell. So Accio asks you a few questions and then comes up with a couple of suggestions. Yeah, what kind of products might make sense? Yeah, like fashion, sportswear, but also shoes. Yeah, and then you say, okay, shoes is interesting. You see a lot of data that Accio provides you with, market analyzers, and then you say, okay, I do shoes. Yeah, shoes sounds good. So Accio helps you with inspiration. But then you also have to specify your product to actually come up with an order, with an RFP. Accio helps you with this too. And then you have to do the real sourcing project process, yeah, where you negotiate a price, organize the delivery and stuff like this. Accio can help here too. Yeah, all these three steps are being handled within the app. And they just launched an agent mode last week, also something that you probably have never heard of, but Google it, it's pretty interesting, where all the stuff that we saw here is actually handled by me as the user, is now handed off to an agent that helps me with actually organizing the whole thing. And if this is successful, then you end up with a chatbot that generates, actually not generate, but actually produce and gets you delivered physical products. Yeah, not just images, but really a container full of, for example, pickleball shoes. Pretty interesting. And the last example that I want to share with you is Ping An, yeah, a company that you might have never heard of, but it's actually the biggest insurance company worldwide. And is actually also one of those companies that has the most AI patents. Yeah, you know, Tencent, IBM, you know, Samsung, Microsoft, Alphabet, but you haven't heard about Ping An, although it's an AI-driven company. And you see here, that's the interesting thing here, this chart is from 2021, yeah, long before ChatGPT became famous. Yeah, they were already working quite a lot of AI on AI, and they use this across all their services. And one of the areas where they use this is a Ping An startup that's called Good Doctor that provides e-health services for Chinese customers. And one of the AI-driven products that they have is the 1-minute clinic. Yeah, it looks a little bit like an old phone booth, but it's actually a doctor that's inside the phone booth. Yeah, it's an AI-driven doctor, but that's only first-level support, so to say. That the AI checks you, makes first suggestions what you might have. Then you have an online connection to a real doctor. Yeah, so it's not only driven by AI, but AI plays a very important role in this whole product. And the interesting thing here is you see here AI is used in healthcare at scale. Over 3 million patients really used this 1-minute clinic, and that was launched in 2018. Yeah, so quite a long time ago. And if you now have heard this for the first time, that's the reason why you should look to China, yeah, because it's 2025, and we all should know about cases like this if we are interested in AI. So what can we learn from this? First of all, we can actually drive real change at scale using AI today. Yeah, we don't have to wait for ChatGPT 6 or all these other models. We should, even if it can't draw a map of Germany, right? That doesn't matter. Yeah, there are ways to use this, and that's what we should figure out. Yeah, but to do this effectively, we have to get out of the efficiency trap. Yeah, we actually have to change the running system. Yeah, and try to find the courage to change things really. And what this means sounds a little bit abstract, but to visualize it a little bit, I can give you a short history lesson. What you see here is a steam engine. Yeah, that was the invention that drove us into the industrial age. And at a certain point, those, which is a very noisy, huge machine, they were replaced by electric machines. But you see one of those on the picture on the right. And the interesting thing here is that in the beginning, the factories just replaced their steam engines with electric engines, but everything else stayed the same. Yeah, the factory layout, everything was still the same. It was just less noisy, not that hot, but the effects were rather small. Yeah, a little bit like our Gen AI paradox that we just saw. Only when they started to get out of the steam age and started to rethink their steam processes with real electric processes, they came up with totally different ways to build a factory, like an assembly belt. Yeah, because suddenly you don't have to need this huge big thing in the middle of the factory floor that drives everything. You can decentralize everything. And that's something that we have to do with AI. Yeah, we really have to think about new ways to do things. And when we do this, we shouldn't optimize or do this in silos. We should always think in systems. That's also something that we can always learn from Asia. And you might have heard this quote before. Yeah, AI won't take your job, but somebody using AI will. I'm not so sure if that's true. Yeah, think about typists. Yeah, in the 60s, every big company looked more or less like this. Yeah, lots of people with typewriters typing stuff. Yeah, now we are living in a world that's full of keyboards. Yeah, way more than they ever had in the 60s, but there are no typists anymore. Yeah, so the reason is obvious. Yeah, because we had word processors, computers. If somebody's typist started to use a word processor instead of a typewriter, she or he probably wouldn't have kept his job. So we have to see that the changes are much deeper than what we expect right now. Yeah? And what's also important, efficiency, there's nothing wrong with making things more efficient, but it can only be the first step. Yeah. When we've done that, we should ask ourselves what is possible with AI. Yeah, something new, not how to get a little bit more efficient, but to what could we do new with AI? What makes it possible? And one idea that I like to mention at this point is we already talked about Shein and what's the core in Shein, the possibility to run supply chains much more efficient. How about reimagine Shein as the YouTube of fashion? Yeah, where everybody on the globe becomes a fashion designer. They can upload their designs to Shein, and Shein helps monetizing those fashion creativity ideas the same way how YouTube is now helping content creators worldwide to monetize their creativity. Yeah. Just one idea to give you a direction where to think or how to answer the question, what can AI make possible? Yeah, totally different things. Okay, to sum things up, AI is more than just quick content and a few saved euros. Yeah, I hope I proved this a little bit, and that's something that you can actually see everywhere in Asia. And what you can also see in Asia are 3 lessons that we just talked about. Yeah, you have to rethink things really. Yeah, if you do this, build silos, not build systems, not silos. And hunt efficiency, that's fine, but see efficiency just as a start. Yeah, there's much more to do than just being more efficient. And I have just one last thing or thought to share with you. What you can also see in Asia, yeah? Get a better vision or a more compelling vision for artificial intelligence. Right now, everybody is hunting AGI, yeah? Artificial General Intelligence. Mark Zuckerberg is pouring hundreds of millions into people that are supposed to bring him super intelligence. Yeah, and actually, that all sounds a little bit frightening to me. In Asia, people are talking about something that's called augmented collective intelligence. Yeah, the idea is, how can AI help us humans to work better together? Yeah, and one of the proponents who's talking about this is Audrey Tang, the first digital minister of Taiwan. And I just heard an interesting podcast with her last week. And there was an interesting quote in there that visualizes this a little bit. Yeah, she says that the AI that they want to build, that they are actually building, is one that counters human flaws and not exploit them. And if we look at the business models of our social media services, for example, they're actually doing this. You know, they are trying to build services that exploit like hate and all these emotions that's driving our ad business. They are exploiting these kind of flaws that we humans have. And if you try to find different ways, that's one of the reasons why you should look to Asia. Yeah, and yeah, that's what I want to share with you today. Good place to find things about this is, as Katharina mentioned, DMEXCO Asia, but also our Rethinking Digital workshops, where we actually talk about these things a little bit more in detail. And actually, the next one is taking place right on this Thursday. If you're interested, let me know. We have at least one free ticket for participants of today. And as we just said at the beginning, that's just the first session. The next one will take place next Tuesday at 5 p.m. again on the same Google Meet channel. And there we think about how we can rethink commerce and e-commerce with ideas from China and from Asia. I hope that's also pretty interesting and you join us again. So thank you from my side. And we have a short conversation talk about this with Stefan before we wrap things up here and open the floor to a real Q&A.
Yeah, thank you very much, Björn. This was enlightening as always. And before we open the discussion for everybody in the audience and then stop the recording as well, I'd like to have a few questions, only 2 or 3 maybe. One thing that you haven't mentioned, what is happening on LinkedIn in our sphere and everywhere else, is a lot of things that are more doomed when talking about AI. What are the people in Asia talking about when 75% of all jobs are being deleted within the next 2 decades? What are their fears? How do they handle that, the economic situation and stuff like that? Or are they only embracing the future and embracing AI?
Yeah, maybe they are not that much embracing future. They are more very busy with building our present times. Yeah, actually using AI right now instead of being afraid of what comes in the future. That might be part of the answer.
Okay, interesting. And you mentioned very interesting. I found the analogy with the typewriters, and we talked about this yesterday, where vibe coding is the buzzword of the day right now. So there are no developers are being needed anymore, and every product manager can code themselves some stuff. What human skills are still needed? What are the agents in China are thinking about? What do we need as a human to contribute to all this AI ecosystems?
Yeah, I think that depends on the vision of AI that you have. Yeah, Audrey Tang's vision is a totally different one than Mark Zuckerberg's vision. But coming back to the typist example, which I actually haven't invented myself, but it comes from a book that's called Reshuffle, rather new book from a guy from Singapore, really interesting. And that gives you a little bit of the answer. Yeah, the problem with the typist, or the problems that the typist had, was that their specialty was typing on a typewriter, and that had huge value because nobody was able to do this back then, and didn't wanted to do this probably also too. And then suddenly these word processors came along, and everybody was starting to write these write papers and stuff like this themselves. Yeah, everybody now uses keyboards, not as fast as the typist did. I think we're all probably much slower than they, but they are no longer around. Yeah, because the stuff, the value that they created by typing is now done by everybody else, just as a normal way of doing business. And maybe that's what we are experiencing with certain types of developers, yeah, where everybody's starting to be a developer, building his or her small little app that it's needed for a couple of weeks. You know, that's what vibe coding will be. But maybe that doesn't mean that that they are no longer developers. Maybe there are people who are have specialties in certain areas who can build bigger systems. I don't know. But and I have no idea what kind of profile saves you from AI. But I think that the most important thing is staying agile or staying flexible, and not complaining about stuff that you see or waiting for stuff that might happen, but actually doing things and posting on LinkedIn about stuff that's actually happening.
This is a very good answer and very good thing to go into the discussion, doing things, and we do open up the discussion right now. First, thank you, Björn, very much for your thoughtful presentation. Thank you, Katharina, for your insights about what is Koelnmesse doing in Singapore. Thank you, lovely audience. And now we stop the recording and